Restaurants, we're coming at you live. I know it's Thursday. I know that much, and I know it's April.
17th.
Oh, you did the research.
I did because I'm just backtracking from it's 4:20 on Sunday.
Oh.
I don't know how I know that.
I don't know how you would know that either.
Because I'm flying to BC.
Right, and that's what your ticket says, right?
That's what my ticket says on the 19th. It's 4:20 on the 20th.
Are you going to be in BC for that?
I will be, yes.
Great. Okay. Oh, I'm getting a call.
How about that? God calling.
You know, was it? I don't know who that was. I'm going to have to call him back. But anyways, here we are. It's Thursday, April 17th. We got a great show lined up for everybody. This is Christina, of course, my co-host. Her last show, at least from Toronto.
From Toronto,
right?
For now.
Because you're going to BC, as we just figured
yes,
out.
we're going to try and take that channel west, young man.
Well, you're going to have to hook up with maybe with Michelle out there, because he's already doing some stuff out there. But he's right downtown Vancouver, though.
Well, that works. It doesn't
Right.
matter where we are. We can do it anywhere.
But you're going to White Rock, which is,
White
at
Rock?
least 45 minutes to downtown.
For the first 2 weeks, I'll be White Rock, yes.
And then you go to the Sunshine Coast, which is at least 90 minutes from Vancouver.
Well, it's even more beautiful. Great place for that channel studio.
I'd like to go. I've never been there.
Well, that's where the Beachcombers were filmed. I'm going to be living in Gibson's.
See, I want to go there. I want to meet Relic.
It's beautiful. It's a great on-location place.
Yeah. Well, he was also. Then he was in X-Files, right? Relic.
Yes, they were my neighbors, actually.
I always thought he looked like Rennie Levesque too. I thought if they need somebody to play Rennie Levesque, they should get the guy that played Relic. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, every once in a while they have little reunions. There's not many of the characters left, though.
That's Jesse.
You were a Beachcombers fan.
Not really. I had to watch it as part of my national duty. Okay.
Journalism.
All right. We have let's just get right into the show because we got Gary Thibault right here at the table with us. Also, we've got Tibor Shanto coming on the show. We're going to be talking about sales with Tibor. Medea Chechik is coming on. She is a transformational coach for over 30 years. And Alex Pierce, actor, model, will be coming on later too.
Wonderful. Great.
But we're going to start the show off with Gary Thibault. And Gary, great to have you back on the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, we could talk about all kinds of stuff. I mean, before the show, we were talking about Bitcoin. We were talking about your farm and the miracle that nature provides.
And your new book,
which
5 Weeds, 5 Trees, 5 Tools, which is
let me hold that up.
A way for self-sufficiency and so it looks like a
Good
little bit
health.
of living off the earth a little bit, good health, with just nature's wonders that are already available to us. So.
Well, nature provides everything we need. We have the greatest teachers all around us. I mean, if we look very carefully at nature, we don't see animals lining up at doctor's office or pharmaceutical companies. I mean, nature just, whatever they need. I mean, even if you have a house dog and you take him out and he doesn't feel well, he'll sniff around on the ground and eat a grass blade till he anorects the poison out of his body. And, you know, nature teaches us all the time that we should be paying attention, but most people aren't.
Probably a lot because we may have lost our, association with nature, paving paradise, and so it's...
Well, not only that, I mean, our education system has basically dumbed down most of the population into believing that everything, just go to any school and ask children what food is, and if it's not wrapped in plastic or on a grocery shelf, they wouldn't have no clue where anything comes from. So, and that's been historically done to a lot of people over the time, but now they're just got it down to a fine science. It's, it's obvious, right?
So what do we do about it?
Well, I would really love to suggest that everybody buys a copy of my book so they could get some real good information, but that's up to them if they really want to learn stuff. And if they actually want to learn from me, they could actually visit my farm and come and see what I do. And, because of Marcus Rothgrant's in the past filming me with the documentary series on me of me talking about how I live and how I do stuff. And the last time I was on this show, Hugh was making fun of the guy who eats weeds. But I truly eat by season, the way nature does. You know, you won't see me eating a salad in the wintertime, but I have a lot of dried roots and vegetables that I grow and harvest from the wild. And I mean, even I discuss in my book the 5 trees, which are pretty well everywhere in North America and all around on every continent in the world. White birch, the outside bark can be made into flour. Pine trees, the outside bark can be made into flour. There's cattails around. There's everything you really need. It's just so abundant. There's no lack of nutrition or food. Otherwise, you know, you think about it, the robins arrived February 15th this year. There was 2 feet of snow on my driveway, and they
Were they early this year?
no, that they usually advertise, they always arrive at the same time as the maple sap starts to run from maple trees. And that's usually about a month before there's any green grass on the ground.
Yeah.
So I ask a lot of people, you know, what are the birds eating for that month? And they'll look at me kind of strange. Well, you know, the worms, bugs, something in trees, but nobody spends 5 minutes to have them just watch what the robins are doing or birds are doing in general when they come early. And they go to old types of fruit trees that most people would not recognize as food, because in the fall, when they look their best, they're actually toxic to your health because they haven't frozen. And, you know, after the freezing and heating cycle of the sun, heating and freezing all winter, what happens is in the springtime, these berries or old fruit trees like crab apples aren't really the most pleasant thing to eat in the fall, but after they freeze and they ferment, they look like brown mush, but they taste really sweet. They taste really good, and they're actually very healthy for you. And so birds will eat this to actually detoxify their body, and then they start eating their proteins and their fats, and they start raising their young. And if you look at how nature, there's no lack of fertility in nature. I mean, you don't see birds with crippled children or not having 3 or 4 young coming to perfect health. And last year at my farm, the robins had 3 sets of nestings. You can see the little sparrows in my backyard right now. They will easily make 4 nestings before the summer even gets pretty hot. And so how can they have such great fertility? You look at the way they're eating and what they're eating. They keep their body clean. I discuss in my book how black bears never get cancer, and they eat rotten meat full of maggots. Why is that? Well, the space stations and the programs in the United States have been studying Ontario's black bears through clinics. That's why the spring bear hunting was stopped originally. Most people do not know that. And they have these clinics around Ontario, and they've been studying them to know that they never get cancer, and their intestinal tract, after 6 months of hibernation, is perfect when they start eating. And so they want to put a man asleep and send him to Mars in 6 months, wake him up, and they don't want him to be alive. And so they're using the science of the black bear. And the black bear eats 4 compounds: cyanide, strychnine, malic acid, and tannic acid. And so does all of nature. They eat these compounds that we are being programmed to think that they're poisons, but they're not. They are in fruits and in berries in moderate levels with other compounds that kind of make it neutral to your body, but they detoxify your intestinal tract and they keep you healthy. And for example, cyanide is Laetrile, B17. People import apricot kernels. Well, the strongest form on earth is the wild chokecherries that grow here in Canada and North America. But how many people know that? Well, they don't go and look and investigate and prove out things. You know, there's a statement in the Bible that says, prove all things. How many people spend the time to actually prove it? They just listen to somebody, brainwash their mind, and say, oh, you know, you can't eat that. You might drop dead. Well, if a bird is eating it, and a bird's not dying, they don't eat poison.
Okay, wait, no, Gary. I just remember observing when I was younger.
Right.
We had a mountain ash tree in our front yard, right? And in the fall, the birds would come and they would go nuts eating the mountain ash berries. But what happened was they were fermented and the birds were getting drunk. And they were flying into our glass window and falling down.
But
is that just a big bird party?
it is. And you see, that's the time I would be eating the
Those are
mountain
Friday
ash
nights.
berries, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when goldfinches fly from northern Canada to go south to South America. You'll see them along the way. They'll stop in my area and they'll go to juniper berry trees in the fall. And that's when the juniper berries are properly fermented and ripened that you can harvest them for your own use. And they got the little blue fuzz on them, and they list perfect, and they're tasting sweet. And that's their food source for them to keep on flying. And so nature is teaching us all the time when we should be consuming stuff. And if we're not going to listen to them when they have all the answers, who are we supposed to listen to?
Okay, so now the last time you were on, and this is what we learned from Marcus Rothkranz, was that you were the guy that was like living in the city and yet eating just the naturally occurring weeds growing in a short radius from your house, right? Which is a fascinating concept. And now, even now, we go to the grocery store and they're selling dandelions.
Of course, but the dandelions you buy in the grocery store, you know, they're pumped with chemicals to grow bigger, and they're different varieties. Sometimes they've hybridized them. You can come to my house right now. I've got dandelion roots dried, and I put them in soup, and I grind them into powder and put them in bread, or cook them with stews. You know, like I use all kinds of thorns and thistle roots. You know, I've got all kinds of dried seeds. The 5 weeds I talk about in the book, I dry the leaves or dry the seeds from them at different times of the year.
What
So
are
let-
the 5 weeds?
Yeah, well, let's. I just want to set it up a bit. So it sounds like this book here kind of simplifies
Yes.
your philosophy, or the ability to identify healthful plants and stuff into 5 weeds, 5 trees, and 5 tools. Can we go over each of these things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, let's talk about the 5 weeds
Okay.
first.
You flip through and look at them, and you can ask me any question you want.
All right. Well,
Okay.
what's the first weed that we should
Well,
respect?
okay, for example, in the beginning of the book, I talk about the skills. I talk about myself and what I went through and stuff like that a little bit into more details than what I did on film. And I also, my first chapter is called Observation. And I actually talk about how people can start looking, and if you're growing a little garden, or which I grow my own food as well, if you're looking at nature and you start to observe properly, you see things. If you don't have to spend hours every day, 5-10 minutes every day. If you want to drink your coffee sitting on your back patio, or a cup of tea, or whatever you want. If you want to have a scotch in the morning, that's up to you. You know, sit down and pay attention to look around. You're going to start seeing things. You know, in September, early October, when we had our first snowfall last year, I stopped at a neighbor's house because I didn't want to walk all the way back to my house, and I borrowed a couple of plastic bags. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going down to pick walnuts." "Walnuts? There's snow on the ground." I said, "Well, there's a whole bunch of squirrels in a walnut tree, and they got to be there for a reason." And so, in the grass now, the walnuts, all their husk had all fallen off, and it's just like a little bit of black slime on them, and your garden hose washes them off real easy. And I brought these walnuts home, and you bake them in the oven at 375 degrees for 15 minutes, and they taste like nothing you can ever buy from the store. And you really need a stone or a hammer and chisel to break them open, because they're much thicker and denser, but the nuts inside are far superior quality you can buy. So you see, nature is always teaching us, but if we don't take that time to really observe, we don't get to see it. So, for example, in my book, you know, when we talk about the 5 weeds, right? You know, a common weed like plantain, it grows everywhere. It came from Central Europe. I give a little bit of history. It came from Central Europe. I show what minerals and vitamins are in it. I show how I use it. And I just bake it in very simple point form. And the reason, you know, I show these plants, there's known lookalikes. Sorrel is another one. Sorrel, there's all kinds of it growing around the world. I even give the example in the Arctic Circle. They ferment it in sealskin pouches, very nice. That was traditional Inuit culture. You know, lamb's quarters came from the Middle East originally. It's around the world everywhere. To me, this is the most nutritious plant on earth. My grandmother, being native, this plant's been in Canada or North America probably from the 1500s or earlier. And she would never make soup without that. I even give that example. If you read the list of minerals and vitamins it has, it's mind-bending.
Now, I think I've tried the lamb's quarters. You just see it growing wild
Right.
everywhere, and it sort of tastes citrusy, right? Is that?
No, it's like a cabbage flavor. The citrusy one is sorrel.
Oh,
And then dandelions, you know, which is a common plant everywhere. You know, and so, for example, I show them in their natural settings, and I even show, for example, how the root bed on dandelions are so complex that I think it's a joke when I see people trying to kill them. You know, it's crazy. When we look at purslane, which is a common plant around the world, now it came from the Middle East, basically Iraq, Iran, the former home of Persia. That's where it originally grew, and it spread around the world. I even show how the Persian culture, and I know Iraqi people even today, that they ferment this plant using garlic and milk in a jar, and they bury it in the ground, 4 feet in the ground, and it ferments, it doesn't spoil, and they just take out what they need, bury it back in the ground. There's no oxygen. So there's simple ways I'm talking about that you can start using food. I show that, you know, I've got my own goji berry plants growing outside of Sudbury in northern Ontario, and that's the same type of elevation as what they grow in northern China, where they actually do grow in the Yangtze River Valley. They're between 1,600 feet and 3,000 feet above sea level, and my place in Sudbury is at 1,600 feet. And so
Did you plant the goji berry?
Yes, I planted them. I got a lady gave me a branch off one of her trees, and she has it growing in her backyard in Toronto. They don't go so well here, but because in my backyard I found they grew better in a pot where the roots would kind of freeze. So I started realizing and did a little research where they grew naturally on the earth and where they were cultivated most. And I started, because I have property outside of Sudbury, that's the same elevation and same kind of conditions. I put them there, and they are doing phenomenal.
So we could grow goji berries here in Toronto, but you should put them in a pot.
Yeah, because then the root bed freezes. It gets colder.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
let the snow cover it.
Because, like, let's talk about goji berries, because I hear they're, like, miraculous, like, you can live to be over 235 years old if you eat goji berries.
Well,
And hemp.
yes, but for example, okay, you know, I discuss how the one superfood that we can eat everywhere in the world, and it'll grow everywhere on Earth, is hemp. I even show in my book how the description in the Bible shows exactly, it's called manna, and I show exactly how it's described, and it's the same seeds and the same, exactly, I took the pictures to
Is that
prove
in your
that.
weed section?
No, that's in a different section of the book.
That's a plant.
And for example, I show the information, which has been proven science, of what is in hemp seeds, especially if you're eating them with the shell. It's more nutritious than anything they can find in mother's milk by double the amounts. And that's when we grew the strongest, the healthiest, when we were children, from mother's milk. We had the less, you know, artificial foods. And if you look at Chinese philosophy, they say at the age of 2 you start poisoning yourself because you listen to everybody else instead of eating mother's milk, right? So we should be eating good quality stuff. And
Mother's milk.
right, you know, or being raised that way. I show, for example,
Hemp and goji. I think that's. I had my hemp and goji.
my
this morning.
hand was basically severed so badly. My wife wanted me to go and get stitches, but I refused doctors. I'm not a fan of medical system too much.
Gary, you want to just hold it up so we can see it in the camera there? I don't know if we'll zoom in on that. But anyway, there you go. There's a picture of your hand.
Basically, my 2 fingers were basically cut off. I fell on a mason jar. You know, my little finger doesn't really close 100% anymore because I cut right through the tendon and the bone. And 30 days later, the picture clearly shows, and I could show you all the pictures on my actual computer. I have the rest of the pictures. You could see my muscles going back together in my hand. And my fingers never change color. Spruce gum, there's 4 kinds of spruce. It's antifungal, antiviral, antitumoral. There's so many uses for it. I mean, as a kid growing up in Northern Ontario, I saw old people that would stop some young guy who had a farm accident where they had broken bones that were healed over, set by the doctor, and they have black spots in their skin, and every time it got damp or cold outside, they would be told, you know, they'd be limping around or feeling bad, and some old person would say, hey, you don't let that person go, and they'd go in the forest, bring out some gum, and they'd plaster it over their skin and put a cloth over top and tell the person, leave it on there till it falls off. And it was like a miracle. In a couple of weeks, their skin was normal and they never had any pain afterwards. So there's all kinds of remedies like that I know about that I didn't list in this book. I mean, I only put 5 weeds, 5 trees, 5 tools because I wanted a base platform for people to learn from, because anybody that's bought the DVD from Marcus about me, I've had thousands and thousands of emails, almost over 15,000 now in the last 2 years. And people will ask me what do I eat in the wintertime and summertime and this and that. And I'm actually putting another 4 books together, and I'm going to show exactly what I do in every season. But this book here as a base platform so they can start implementing some of the things I do, and they could actually do any of this. When you talk about the tools, for example, you know, anybody can use a mortar and pestle, right?
And that's to grind your roots, I suppose, right?
Yes, harder things. Native corn, for example, which I show a picture of in this book here that I grow myself. I grow my own native corn.
Well, what's the difference between that and regular corn that we're used to?
The regular corn right
GMOs.
now is 99% genetically modified. I spent 15 years, 15 years ago, I started gathering Dora Reeves, like I talk about in the DVD, and I started shelling the corn and experimenting, getting it to grow. And, you know, my corn is everything from bright red to blue to multicolored to some yellow, some white. It's unbelievable. But when you try to eat this corn, you can soak it for 3 days, then cook it for 8 hours, and it's still crunchy. It's that hard,
Oh, wow.
right? So I always say that when you eat soft food, you get soft. When you eat hard food, you're physically hard. And this is a fact, because food that has real strength, if I would have thought about it, I could have brought some corn, cattail, acorn bread. I make a combination of all 3 ingredients. And I could have brought some in here, and you taste it. It's hard to chew, and it doesn't taste sweet, but you'll notice even eating a piece a couple inches square, you can go 5 or 6 hours and you don't feel hungry, because it doesn't have the glycemic spike, but it has steady long chain sugar. It's like eating raw honey with the wax. It has a long chain breakdown, so you don't get a spike in your pancreas, so it doesn't affect your blood sugar, it doesn't kill you, it doesn't poison you, you know, like processed stuff. So there's lots of things I talk about in here. For example, in the back of my book, you know, people can argue with this science, but it's been proven out. I came up with the idea. I looked at the word cancer, and the word cancer actually tells you, right in the word, how you can cure yourself. It actually teaches you, each letter spells out a definition. And you can actually read it, and it talks about how you can change your life and accept responsibility, cleanse your body physically, emotionally, spiritually, enzymes for your digestive system, and so on. Anyway, dentist William Kelly, which I paragraphed in here a little bit about him, he was banned from publishing his book till he died in 2005. And the only reason his information got out is because he gave homemade clients, home little versions to every person that came to see him. And there was a lady that recently died at 95 years of age, cancer-free. She was diagnosed when she was 52, and she was from Toronto, and she used William Kelly, and she was only given days to live. And basically he used digestive enzymes and real food and nothing else. And it wasn't about being raw food or vegetarian. He found some of his clients had to eat meat 3 times a day. Everybody's an individual. And that's something I tell people. I say you should be eating by season the way nature does. I mean, I almost died between 38 and 40 years of age. I didn't think I would live. Some days I was bleeding a couple blood a day. And I'm 57 now, and the next time we do an interview with one of my future books, or even for this book, I'll bring in pictures of me, government pictures, from your driver's license or firearms license. I got the pictures, and you can see me at 15 years ago, at 10 years ago, at 5 years ago, and each picture I'm looking younger. So I don't know how to explain that. The pictures can't lie. I didn't take the pictures. Mm-hmm. Some guy in an office took the pictures. But you lay them on the table, and anybody looks at them and say, what's going on here? Because you actually look younger in each picture, and they're 5 years apart. And so I notice my skin is always getting better. I've naturally gotten really lean and hard. Like I could do a demonstration here where I can lean my whole body weight against my stomach muscles, and I'll keep talking, my voice will not change. And I'm not doing 500 sit-ups a day or anything. I talk in this book about how people shortchange themselves by not breathing properly.
Yeah, that's a big one, right?
It is.
And nobody even thinks about that one.
Right. Well, animals always breathe in their lower diaphragm. You never see a dog breathing in their
Or
chest.
shallow breathe.
Right.
Shallow breathe.
Well, and we cheat ourselves. So when you breathe down here, you're doing 500 sit-ups a day without doing anything. Right? You know,
Nice.
it's all common sense in this book.
So, okay, so this book, okay, so now who should think about getting their hands on this book?
Anybody who wants to be really self-sufficient and improve their health, they will find some really good information in it. At the health show, I almost sold out of every copy. I only have a few left right now, and I'm going to be printing another bunch. And, you know, I think that the information in here will bend most people's brains. They will not believe some of it until they go and prove it. And I challenge them with a few questions in here that really puts it to the point where go and prove it. And I even show how, you know, there's some important people around the world, Mr. and Mrs. Obama, the president and his wife of the United States, the first time in 60 years have an organic garden. And I asked the question, why? So government policy in the United States is almost saying that you're not allowed to give your own food to your neighbor. This is past laws now. You look at every presidential election when they were running for office in the United States in the past 25 years, they're all sitting on their own ranches eating their own food. The Queen of England, which I quote in here, I talk about, you know, a little bit about her, when she came for the G8, G20 summit that was all the riots downtown Toronto, when she came before and she was with Mr. Harper at a downtown hotel, the front page of the Toronto Star said, Queen comes with her own chef and food. So what did they learn from Thomas Parr? I mentioned a few things about Thomas Parr. You know, Thomas Parr outlived 10 queens and kings of England. And he died at 152 years of age. That's recorded by royalty. He's buried in the Royal Court of England. And he fathered children out of wedlock at over 130. And he was married twice and fathered children. He inherited his father's farm at 78. You know, got married at 83. There's some real questions. And the English government really checked him out in the 1500s and 1600s. So there's lots of information in this book that will make your mind jump back and say, hey, maybe I should look into this. And I'm living proof of it.
Yeah.
What else can I tell you?
Yeah,
And we're talking.
Sorry,
Sorry.
five weeds, 5 trees, 5 tools. Can they be? Is that pretty much geographically cover North America?
This is worldwide.
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 So we can
All
find
of
those
these
weeds pretty much growing anywhere. And
I ran into a man that just come back from holidays in South America, and he lives down there. He said these 5 weeds are in his front lawn. I've talked to people in the Middle East, everywhere. Same thing. These white weeds are everywhere. The 5 trees, anywhere in Europe, Russia, North America, northern parts of Africa, Middle East, even some parts of South America will have at least 3 of the 5 trees. The tools, you can probably pick them up at any yard sale if you really wanted to. Canadian Tire, any outfitter store, they're not expensive at all. Some of the tools you could probably actually make yourself if you're a little bit handy.
So this is great for you know, people, you know, the survivalists out there, the people who are getting ready for the apocalypse, or just for people that want to be self-sufficient, people living in cities. You don't have to live in the country to benefit from this, right?
No, when we had the brownout power, what was that, 6 years ago now?
Yeah.
I sat in my backyard. We're out power in northern end of Etobicoke for a couple of days. We didn't miss anything. I mean, I cooked food for my children. We sat outside and we had candlelight readings, reading children's stories when my children were younger. But I made food every day, and it wasn't that you know, there was a lack of food for me, because I just walked outside in the garden or around the house, picked up whatever we needed, and whatever I had stored, and we made food. And I saw neighbors offering me ice cream that was melting from their freezers, which I didn't want anyway, and all the garbage, and they're all worried, looking for power and all that stuff. And yet there's all kinds of material just right around them to eat.
Yeah.
And so I think this is just basic common sense. We just recently had an ice storm. I seen people lined up complaining to the mayor of the city. It was just stupidity. Like, look, I just included one modern convenience in here, which was a little camp stove, okay, that costs less than $25 at any Asian store. In Korea, it's mandatory law that you have to have that in your house because they have 4 seasons. Korean government, South Korea, has this as part of their law. You can ask any, that's why it's so popular in Korean stores. They have them. And the gas is butanol, which you could cook with in your washroom. You could never poison yourself. So they would have been able to provide their children at least with some hot meal, so you're not so cold. Simple stuff. It's not complicated, not
So-
rocket science.
All right, so it's really up to everybody to be prepared for whatever's happening, and it sounds like this book can help people get into that situation. Where can people, is there a website or something, Gary, where people can go order the book or
Yeah,
find
you
out
can
more?
contact me at my webpage, gary@garytebow.com,
That's
or my email, which is gary@garytebow.com.
And that's 1 R or 2 R's in
2
Gary?
R's in my name.
Okay.
T-I-B-O.
All right, Gary@garytebow.com, or
And if anyone wants to phone me on my cell, which is always on, 416-709-3535,
okay.
I'll
All
be
right.
glad to help.
Okay,
Yeah.
Gary, great to see you again.
Gary.
And let's get you back, and we can do more fun stuff. Maybe taste some of that Indian corn.
Listen, and you know, if
And that
anybody wants to
bread.
come out and visit my teaching center at my farm, they can get in touch with me as well. I do trainings out there and seminars.
Where is that? Terra Nova, where is that?
Terra Nova is between Orangeville and Alliston, north of Highway 89. It's just north of the Mansfield Ski Hill,
Okay.
off of Airport Road. It's a little town. I'm
Right.
in the corner of the farm of the town. You know.
Awesome. Okay.
It's a nice little place.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
You're very welcome.
Okay,
Forward to
so
reading your book.
we're going to take a little break, come back with Tibor Shanto, and Liquid Lunch will continue.